it was independently funded. It's like all style PhD. So that friend of mine managed for years to organize a campaign to raise funds, not to be bound to any like one unique external funder. So that gives you huge freedom. It's long, it's tedious. Not everyone can afford it, um, but she managed to do it, and she was really, really, really determined to do that because I mean, to her credit, that's even more work than what you have to do in the medical field, and you know she's not working in finances, so that's like a double job. But that provides you with full independence, and you don't have to answer to anyone.
Today we're going to be discussing a study on ketosis, and that study has just been published. And here to discuss it with me is Alice. Alice, would you mind introducing yourself and also talking a little bit about how you're related to this particular study that's just been published?
Sure. So yeah, first of all, thanks again for inviting me. It's great to be here and to talk in details about the behind the scenes of a study. So yeah, my name is Alice. I am French. I live in France. I have been a participant for a study on nutritional ketosis that was published approximately a month ago. The link will be, I suppose, below the video so that everyone can access it. And I am not a scientist myself. I do not have any medical backgrounds, but I was one of the 10 participants. So if you see, when you will open the study, for example, you see all the results of the range of the participants, and that was some of mine that were analyzed. So what I think I could sort of provide is, first of all, how are medical studies conducted? How was this one especially contributing to the background knowledge that we have on long-term ketosis effects, because this is one of the main criticisms that we receive when we say we do carnivore or keto. People say, "Oh, but there is no long-term study." Well, here is one. And so yeah, some pieces of, for example, background knowledge on the medical worlds that I discovered and that were sort of also explaining why it's so hard to conduct a proper study.
Wow. So, how did you actually get involved? Did you kind of, did someone, did you put your hand up or did someone come and seek you out?
Yeah, I mean, there were several researchers doing the study. One of them, the director of the study, is a longtime friend. And she is also the reason why I sort of discovered keto and all that technically nutritional world, so to speak. Um, and it's okay, this is though going to be a long origin story, but so that everything can be put back together in the end. So she's a family friend. I met her, I was a teen. I was like around 12, 13. And she was like a friend of one of my older brothers. And over time, we grew very close together. And now she's sort of, they are very good friends, sort of my older sister, technically. Um, and I did not have like a huge interest in nutrition until my father got cancer. And then this is how, because she is pursuing a degree, she was already um, deep studying ketosis at the time. It was 7 years ago. And she started to give us advice, to talk to her about ketosis. And we thought, huh, okay, that's very interesting. Started to implement all this. Um, Unfortunately, the result was not great because unfortunately, you know, when you have advanced stage cancer, you go to hospital. The first thing they do is to put you a glucose drip. So every single time he would go back to the hospital, he would see like small improvements at home, and then it would sort of go back to zero. And so my father died, um, and I stayed very very interested in all this because I could see that there were some improvements. I could see that there were sort of very interesting things that people did not talk about very seriously, but were very relevant. So I've been in sort of doing, normal keto for 7 years. So I'm now 27, started at 20. I did not have a lot of health issues when I was young. So it was not about trying to resolve an existing problem. Um, but it was much more about staying in that very sort of, peace of mind, clarity of mind that I really, really enjoy. And so, yeah, did that for a couple of years. And then a year and a half ago, that friend of mine reaches out, says, I'm going to do a study on keto, nutritional ketosis. Would you like to be some of the participants? Because I need only female, premenopausal, that do not have any or have had any health issue in the past. And that have been sort of already familiar with ketosis, that know sort of to adapt to such a study. I was I'm in. And and so it's sort of also to me a nice closure, to participate in a medical study after having, unfortunately, my father was not the only one, after having many family members that died without, there's not much you can do yourself. And now it was sort of a nice conclusion. And this is also how I got more familiar with the carnivore way of eating.
What was the aim of the study? Did they have a particular hypothesis?
So the aim of the study was to observe how exactly on healthy people, um, aging factors, biomarkers, growth factors would evolve on first ketosis and then a return into the sort of normal eating guidelines. So to compare on a healthy population, the biomarkers of ketosis and the biomarkers of, I don't know how I'll call it, normal standard diet. Let's call it standard diet.
So it's kind of you're doing the regular kind of diet pyramid upside down, and then you're going to change it back to the right way up for the study.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly.
Okay, okay,
And
interesting.
that's the nuance. The fact is, the criterion for the nutritional ketosis is exactly that. You have to be, have a certain level of blood glucose and blood ketones, but you're absolutely free to tweak your diet as you want. If you want to be carnivore, that's fine. If you want to be ketosis, if you want to fast, if you don't want to fast, it's all right. The main thing is that you have, that your ketones are above a certain number, and that's it.
This reverting to the kind of, let's call it the standard diet. Going back to the standard diet, how long were you on that way of eating?
So I think I'll describe like overall the study, how it was organized. That was a very sort of it was very demanding in terms of organization. It covered 3 periods of time, each of them over 3 weeks. So the first one is 3 weeks where you're on keto. You're eating as usual. You take a picture of every single thing you're eating, preferably with your hand next to it so that you can see the size of the portion. And you take your blood glucose and your blood ketones around 6, 7 times a day, like when you wake up, before you eat for the first time, middle of the day, then before you eat for the second time, then right before bed. And if you can do more, of course you do more. You write every single thing you're doing during the day. If you're doing, for example, exercise, if you're feeling tired, if you for how much time you sleep, how you're feeling generally, psychologically, physically, uh, so all that for 3 weeks on ketosis. Then you do a complete blood test in the hospital after those 3 weeks, where you undergo a very, let's say, disagreeable experience that you have to drink this little bottle full of sugar. Technically, it's a very, 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 very dense liquid, and it's absolutely disgusting. The first time I did not know what to expect, so I was like, oh, okay. And then I was absolutely dreading this only part of the study that I completely hated. Like choose between lemon and blueberry, but that was horrendous anyway. And so you do that like I think 7 a.m. and you spend the entire morning in the hospital, and they take your blood glucose 1 hour, 130, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours after that, and they see how it evolves. So that's part one. Part two is exactly the same, but then you come back to this sort of standard diets. And you have to sort of be like someone who pays attention to their diet. You don't eat junk, you don't eat very sugary stuff just to eat sugar. But yeah, you eat fruits, a lot of veggies, breads, but healthy carbs. Um, and then you go
So
back for another study.
you can have spaghetti or something like that, and
Yeah, and
mm.
of course you don't like be, sort of you do as people would do if they want to have a healthy diet. That is, I don't know, 1 day out of 7 you go have a pizza because that is how they it's it. But it was so foreign to me when it goes back to that. I have to say, oh, okay, yeah, people do drink a lot of fruit juice. I would take a lot of fruit juice because that's sort of healthy. um so yeah, you still do that. You still monitor, of course, your blood glucose, your blood ketones as well. Um, and then part three, you go back to ketosis. And that part three was actually where I started discovering carnivore, and I actually did ketosis, normal, standard diets, carnivore. And so my results are even better on part three than on part one. So it's quite impressive, really, because each period is just 3 weeks. So that's enough for the blood markers to improve or actually get worse significantly.
I don't know what the best way to talk about this is, whether that's your particular results or just the overall study findings. But um, what was the end result of looking at these three periods of time?
Well, I mean, one of the most impressive results that was expected really is the huge growth in the IGF-1 hormone, which is, I mean, I guess you've talked about that before, but significantly associated with aging and cancer. Because the long-term purpose of such study is, of course, to study very specific markers that are associated with cancer. So, of course, there are many different factors that were studied in the study directly, but they study especially insulin, IGF-1, especially like glucose in general in your blood. So these were the main elements that the study was focused on. As for me personally, because all the results really were the same, it was a it was a significant difference from uh, like period one to period two, because I had completely lost the habit of eating sugar, at least on a long term basis. And I could see the changes, not exactly the ones I feared, because I feared I would have a lot of like brain fog and all that, but not at all. That was okay. I just felt bloated all the time. And I was, oh, is that normal? Should I be worried? And my friend was, no, no, no. Actually, this is the standard situation most people are in, and you don't realize it when you're on keto. You and my skin started to be like completely different. I was oh my hell, I'm 26 and I'm starting to have pimples again. Of course, this is very sort of weird, but in after a week, I think those changes were starting to be very very visible. But the most interesting thing was that I was so used to be on ketosis. Every single time I would eat something like fatty meat, my ketones would like shoot. So my body was so used to, okay, let's make ketones as soon as I would have fatty meat. Even if I had a dessert with it, or if I had bread, I would still make way more ketones than most people would. So I had to be careful with that, not to sort of influence the results. But it proves how adaptable your bodies are. It was quite surprising, really.
It's really like over 7 years, your body's been in this training, and you kind of broke it for the 3 weeks, but during the 3 weeks, when you gave your body the signal, hey, this is remember this, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got it. Okay, I'll get your ketones up.
Yeah. So something we're used to see. Yeah. Okay. Fine. We can deal with that. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean that was also the very interesting thing when I went like more towards carnivore on the third period of time. First of all, it's just so impressive. Over 3 weeks where you're not on keto, you gain water, but like so much water because they measure, everything. They measure, yeah, also in the hospital, your waistline, your weight, your height, also how your body is composed. The bone density, your muscles, water in your body. And I gained personally, but every single person gained approximately that, almost 2 kilos of just water. I, when I went, off keto, and you lose
So
that very quickly. But it's,
you must have
you know,
felt pretty uncomfortable during that 3 weeks.
yeah, that was okay. But as I said, I was just the bloat was very, very uncomfortable. Just you sort of. I was diligent and I was like eating fibers, because fibers are good for you. You know that's all. Everyone says that, and it was not. It was not good for me.
That sounds so funny. I was diligently eating my fiber. Uh,
Yeah.
Give me the pizza. Um, so, what was the feeling like going back from that to carnivore? Did you have any struggles? Like, was your body suddenly having cravings or anything like that, or did you find the transition back pretty easy?
Now that was pretty easy. Um, Also, one good thing is that I didn't have that many cravings, to be honest, uh, ever. But no, the big difference I think was that when I was on keto slash low carb, I was still eating, for example, a lot of veg, nuts, a lot of dairy. I was thinking, okay, let's at least completely take out the nuts and the veg for the third time, sorry, and see how it goes. And I think that makes the sort of transition even easier. So that was I did not have any sort of complication on the way back, on the way back to low carb.
You're still doing carnivore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Now
So,
full 100% carnivore. It's like it's great. Mhm.
so what kind of difference do you feel there is with doing carnivore versus when you were kind of keto before? Like
Okay.
there must be a reason you've stayed with carnivore.
To be fair, I've been doing carnivore since because the study ended. My trial ended a year ago, and I started to be like long-term carnivore since January, so a bit less than a year. So to compare that with 7 years on keto, it's the comparison is it's worth what it's worth, but it's undeniably to me much better. For example, a couple things that I can think about right now is that fasting is just so much easier. Um, on keto, I would generally eat 2 meals a day, but I would eat them like readily. On a carnivore, I'm like, oh, okay, if I don't have time to eat, whatever, it's okay. I can like 1 meal a day is fine. 2 meals if it's good. I don't have sort of this um yeah, this sort of discipline that you can always have that, oh, I need to eat this, I need to eat that, I need to eat this number of carbs, this is too much, this is okay, this is enough. It's like, no, I just eat meat If I'm hungry, I eat. If I'm not hungry, I don't eat. This is like so simple and so liberating because it's you don't have any numbers to focus on, and it's so peaceful. And you can focus on other things afterwards because you realize, oh yeah, one good thing is that you put on muscle so easily. It's almost scary. But that's absolutely great. Like if you decide, for example, I don't know, to practice one specific sport or practice one specific activity, intellectually or physically, that you're really passionate about, you stay focused for hours on end, much longer than on keto. And that is really something I found so valuable in life. It's just the point.
I guess there's a reasonable number of people like following a keto lifestyle or a carnivore lifestyle in France if we were able to put this study together. So how is the feeling in France in relation to this style of eating?
Unheard of. People have never heard of carnivore, to be honest. It's if you say, but that's the interesting nuance. If you say starting to hear vaguely about keto diets, very vaguely. But if you say I'm doing carnivore, they don't get it. I just say I'm just eating meat, and they're like, "You're they're unbelievable." I mean, my coworkers already think I'm doomed, uh, because they saw me not only doing the blood tests every single day at work. For lunch, I would like unpack my six boiled eggs, and they were like, "You're gonna die." So that was very funny. So yeah, most people have not heard of it in France. However, I don't think there's been this intense focus like in the US or like in the UK, because this study was in the UK, to be clear. Um, to say, oh, meat is bad, cholesterol is bad, fat is bad. People here, they're pretty chill. When I say, oh, I'm interested in meat, they're like, oh, you don't eat any veg? No, okay. It's much more, you do you, whatever, and people are still very attached to having meats at meals. If you say only having a vegetarian meal, people are like, you're weird. So it's not that big of a deal.
My kind of image of France is like a lot of the eating involves lots of things like fattier cuts of meat and butter and things like that. Is that true?
Not yes and no. um, I mean, the reason why, by the way, French cuisine is so known and complex is that the cuts of meat are not the fattiest. Um, and so you need, sauces. You need something with cream, with butter. You need to accommodate the meat to make it more like juicier or tastier. But the cuts are generally very lean. Like steak tartare, raw beef. I love it. Um, Most people love it, but it's just purely lean beef. You can also mix it with a raw egg yolk. But most cuts served in restaurants are generally lean. And I noticed that people are still very, very focused on eating lean meat because it's healthier. Um, the good thing is fat itself is not as demonized. You have butter. This is really a symbol in some regions. You have cream. Of course, you have foie gras and saucisson. It's sort of one does not cancel the other. In cooking, meats are generally lean, but the fat itself is not something you have to avoid. So technically, that makes eating out not that big of a challenge.
While you've been eating this way, whether it's keto or carnivore, have you had anyone that said to you, "Oh, I might give this a try. What are you doing? Tell me about it. I'm going to try it myself."
No, unfortunately, it's rather the other way around. And I think it has a lot to do with my age group, to be fair. Uh, I'm rather young, and I tend to hang out with people my age between like mid 20s, mid 30s. So it's not the period of life where you have chronic issues and you've started to notice something that's not going well with you. Although I have lots of friends who have chronic diseases and not just little problems. Um, but most people, they're still in this stage where it's, it's fine. Like they're fine eating a lot of grains, a lot of sugar and all that. They're like, but I don't have any problems, so it's okay. And I'm like, okay, so you want to have to wait to have problems, but anyway, it's it's all right. But yeah, it's not something people are curious about around me, because generally they will ask me the specific questions because they see it's weird. They're curious because it's weird, but they're not curious to do it themselves. So I generally answer them. Of course, it's like it's too much fat, you're gonna have cancer, or the second question is generally is going to destroy the planet. I get that a lot. It's not sustainable to eat meat. It's going to destroy the planet, all that. So now I'm pretty used to all this and to explain that these are um, preconceptions that are not actually true. But the way they generally end the discussion, because I'm not trying to force that on them, I'm just answering the question. But the way they generally end is, oh, but I could never anyway give up da da da, like bread, chips, whatever. I could never give up this. Okay. Also, so socialized, the fact that you're going to like Christmas is around the corner. It's like if you say, which I did last year. Oh, have you? Did you have chocolate at all? And I said no, I did not have any piece of chocolate at all. And like, how are you having fun? You're missing out, and it's so pervasive. You have to eat all these little shiny things around you because it's part of the fun.
Kind of like, well, Christmas is around the corner, or this is around the corner, or that's around the corner. I mean, if they're always looking for something around the corner, they're always going to find something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was Halloween. There's Christmas, and then there's like Easter, whatever. So
yeah.
there will always be something to
Mm.
celebrate. And it's not to say, however, that I know there are different types of people. I can have a chocolate and I'm fine. It's not like I won't feel deprived or whatever. If I want to, for example, eat a bit of carbs one day, it's fine. I also have that for alcohol. I do enjoy wine. To be honest, this is really the thing. I I don't think I will ever sort of give up forever. I grew up in a very traditional French family where you would taste wine. It's not like something you drink to be drunk. It's really something you really enjoy. You smell, you taste. So this is something that is carefully addressed. Um, and and yeah, as long as you say, I think, um, okay, so there is this specific type of food. I know this is not the best nutritionally, but once in a while for the experience of that, I do enjoy it and I do not want to feel deprived forever. I completely get this. For some people, however, I do have this sort of almost addictive responses that, oh, if I don't eat, I don't know, baguettes, I'm going to be depressed. Like, no, actually, this is rather the opposite, but you know,
It's interesting when you say, being brought up in a traditional French family and you appreciate the wine and you taste the wine and stuff like that. I was brought up in a traditional Australian family. We didn't have to taste the wine at all. We just had to get it down. So
I don't know. I mean, there are so many other interesting things about traditional Australian families.
yeah.
Well, if you manage
So
to make it out alive after your 30s, you're fine.
So that's why I mean I think I've got the double whammy. I was born in Scotland and raised in Australia, so that's probably not a good combination. So that's why I abstain now. But Alice, having been through this process to study, um, did you learn anything? Did you gain any insights into how this kind of stuff is done?
Yeah. Okay, first of all, let's just address this specific study and one interesting point that is not covered. The fact that it's an all-female study, it's very rare actually. And I was not aware of that, but most, not all of them, most studies, when you say, when the results are published and you think it's done on a very eclectic group of people, it's actually much more like men-based. Not, of course, for any sexist reason or whatever. It's just that, of course, hormones are much more fluctuant in females than in males. And when you do analyze hormones, of course, you want to have a baseline that is more stable. So you tend to select more men than women. The downside, of course, is that there are less research done on females, and so less things we know about how some diets or some products may impact women. So that is sort of giving also more strength to the studies because these markers were measured despite natural hormonal cycles that you do have in premenopausal women. Um, but yeah, I did not know that before. A lot of studies are conducted on men because it's just easier. And of course, whereas it's easier in the moment, it's also creates a huge gap uh, in medical research. So that's one thing I learned, and the other, yeah, it's just the internal dynamics of PhD research, let's say. So, I mean, for example, the fact that you, depending on the number of years you do a PhD, you do not have a lot of options for getting funded. Most people will indeed get their research funded, and the sponsors are generally medical companies. um, because such study are so expensive. If I take the example of this um, one set of blood tests or to analyze all the biomarkers would cost around £2,000, which amounts to $2,500. And each of the 10 person has had 3 tests, like 30 tests like that. It's a huge budget. And yeah, when you're a PhD, you also, of course, work with a team. They have to be paid. You have to be paid. Um, and of course, conserving, for example, the blood samples, that's also very expensive. Using the facility, you have to pay for everything. And is just so easy for sponsors and funders that to orient your research in one direction or another because you are providing all the money. So in the end, if the researchers wants to do a study that you do not really see published, you're going to say, okay, we'll just fund another. Uh, because it's so now it's just so easy to find people who are in dire need of funding. You do not have a lot of public funding for independent research.
And so, how do you know how the study that you were part of was funded?
It was independently funded. It's like all style PhD. So that friend of mine managed for years to organize a campaign to raise funds, not to be bound to any like one unique external funder. So that gives you huge freedom. It's long, it's tedious, not everyone can afford it. Um, but she managed to do it, and she was really, really, really determined to do that because I mean, to her credit, that's even more work than what you have to do in the medical field, and she's not working in finances, so that's like a double job. But that provides you with full independence, and you don't have to answer to anyone.
I'll include the links to the study and the other links that you gave me in the description. Alice, I appreciate you coming on and sharing this information with us and talking about your own journey as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.